The courtroom buzzed at Tuesday morning, alive with hushed whispers and a heavy sense of anticipation hanging in the air. From across the aisle, I could practically feel Brenda Carmichael's smug confidence drifting toward me like an overpowering cloud of cheap perfume. She sat there in her signature power suit, lips curled into that self-satisfied smirk I had come to know far too well, leaning toward her lawyer as if the verdict had already been decided in her favor. The ever-righteous HOA president, ready to put the stubborn ranch owner in his place, or so she believed. That illusion lasted right up until Judge Harrison called the court to order and asked if I had legal representation. I stood slowly, adjusting my tie with deliberate calm. "Your Honor," I said evenly, "I'll be representing myself." Brenda's lawyer, a young and clearly overconfident man named Jason Bradley, let out a faint smirk, as though he had just stumbled into a winning lottery ticket. Poor kid, he had no idea what he'd just stepped into. "Very well," Judge Harrison replied, arching a brow slightly. "Please state your qualifications for the record." I cleared my throat. Robert Sterling, retired attorney. 35 years with Sterling and Associates. Specialized in property law and civil litigation. Member of the state bar since 1987. The smirk vanished from Bradley's face instantly. Across the room, Brenda's jaw dropped open before she quickly forced it shut. Life out on Pinecrest Ranch was supposed to be peaceful. After decades spent battling in courtrooms and corporate showdowns, I bought that 100-acre spread precisely for its solitude. No neighbors for miles, no HOA nonsense, just me, my horses, and the occasional weekend visit for my grandkids. The ranch itself had been in the Bennett family for 3 generations before I purchased it, and old Arthur Bennett had made one thing crystal clear when we signed the papers. This land had never been part of any homeowners association. The nearest subdivision, Maple Grove Estates, sat a full 2 miles away, separated by county land and my property line. For the first year, everything was exactly as I had hoped. Quiet mornings, open skies, and not a single soul telling me what color I could or couldn't paint my barn. Then Brenda Carmichael got herself elected HOA president. Our first encounter happened on a crisp October morning. I was out repairing a stretch of fence when a white Lexus SUV rolled up to my gate. Out stepped a woman in her 50s, hair perfectly highlighted and styled, clipboard in hand, the very image of suburban authority. "Excuse me," she called out in a clipped tone that suggested the world should pause when she spoke. "I need to talk to you about community trail access." I set down my hammer and walked over, keeping the gate firmly between us. "Can I help you?" "I'm Brenda Carmichael," she announced, "president of Maple Grove Estates HOA. She said it as though it should impress me. "We're implementing a new community trail system and need to establish an easement through your property to connect to the county hiking paths." I nearly laughed. "Ma'am, this is private property. It's not part of your HOA. Her smile tightened. "Well, that's exactly what we need to discuss. The community believes interconnected trails would benefit everyone. Higher property values, healthier lifestyles. That's great for your community." I replied calmly, "But this ranch isn't part of Maple Grove Estates. Never has been." She tapped her clipboard with a manicured nail. "Mr. Sterling, I don't think you understand how these things work. When a community decides something is for the greater good, individual holdouts can't just block progress." That was the moment I knew she was going to be a problem. "Ma'am," I said evenly, "I understand perfectly. The answer is no. Have a nice day." I turned back to my fence as she huffed, climbed into her Lexus, and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the gravel. Over the next 6 months, Brenda's little crusade escalated from mildly annoying to outright illegal. First came the letters. Official HOA letterhead demanding I attend board meetings I had absolutely no obligation to attend. Then came the county complaints about supposed code violations that didn't exist, forcing me to waste entire afternoons with inspectors who always left shaking their heads at the absurdity. She even organized community walks, where groups of residents gathered at my property line to gawk, point, and snap photos like I was some exhibit at a zoo. The breaking point came in April. I arrived at my back gate to find the padlock cut clean through entire tracks, winding deep into my land. Someone had hammered bright orange trail markers into my trees along my private road. I spent the afternoon tearing them out and installing new security cameras. That night's footage told me everything I needed to know. At 2 in the morning, there was Brenda Carmichael herself, dressed in a tracksuit, bolt cutters in hand, marching right up to my gate with 2 other HOA board members. They cut the new lock, drove straight in, and began planting trail markers as if they owned the place. The next morning, I hired a welding crew to install a solid steel gate reinforced with concrete posts. Then I had my attorney send Brenda and her entire board a formal cease and desist letter. That's when she made her biggest mistake. She decided to sue me. The lawsuit arrived on a Friday afternoon, hand-delivered by a process server who looked more apologetic than professional. Brenda Carmichael and the Maple Grove Estates HOA were suing me for malicious obstruction of community resources, interference with supposed easements, and my personal favorite, creating a public nuisance. They demanded I remove all barriers immediately, pay $50,000 in damages, and cover their legal fees. I read the complaint twice, debating whether to laugh or pour a stiff drink. Her lawyer had thrown every argument imaginable at the wall, hoping something would stick. Claims of historical use, implied easements, even the suggestion that my ranch had once been part of a larger parcel tied to community access. All complete nonsense, but it still required a proper response. So I decided to dust off my bar license. No sense paying another attorney for a fight I could win in my sleep. I filed my answer, denying every charge encountered with claims of trespassing, harassment, and defamation. Then I settled in for what I knew would be an entertaining day in court. Brenda Carmichael had no idea she had just picked a legal fight with someone who had spent 35 years eating lawyers like hers for breakfast. Which brings us back to that crowded Tuesday morning. Brenda strutted into the courtroom flanked by her little entourage, her attorney, 2 HOA board members, and someone scribbling furiously for the neighborhood newsletter. She even wore her HOA president lapel pin as if it carried actual legal authority. Judge Harrison, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s whom I had appeared before countless times in my career, took her seat. She didn't recognize me right away. 5 years had passed since my retirement, but when I stated my credentials, I saw the flicker of recognition cross her face. "Mr. Sterling," she said with a faint nod, "welcome back to my courtroom." Brenda's lawyer, Jason Bradley, jumped to his feet to deliver the opening statement. The kid had enthusiasm, I'll give him that, but his words were all style and no substance. He paced dramatically, waving his hands like he was auditioning for a courtroom drama, spinning a tale of me as some antisocial recluse selfishly blocking innocent families from enjoying nature. According to him, the trails had existed for decades. My property was holding the community hostage, and Brenda Carmichael was a selfless leader simply trying to serve the people. When it was my turn, I didn't bother with theatrics. "Your Honor," I said plainly, "I have here the original deed to my property from 1952, the official survey from my purchase in 2021, and sworn affidavits from the previous 3 owners covering over 60 years of ownership." I placed each document carefully on the table. At no time has any easement existed on this land. At no time has it been part of any HOA. And at no time has there been public access of any kind. Bradley's confident smile began to fade. Furthermore, I continued, pulling out a manila folder. "I have security footage showing Ms. Carmichael personally trespassing on my property on no fewer than 6 occasions, cutting locks, driving past my gates, and installing unauthorized trail markers." I handed the judge printed stills. "I also have 17 harassing letters sent by Ms. Carmichael, records of 9 false complaints filed with county departments, and documentation of a coordinated smear campaign against me." Judge Harrison's eyebrows rose as she examined the evidence. "Ms. Carmichael," she said, holding up a photograph, "is this you?" Brenda's face shifted from smug to pink to a deep, alarming shade of purple. "That's taken out of context," she sputtered. "The community needed those trails." "So you admit to trespassing?" the judge pressed. Her lawyer quickly jumped in, claiming his client had acted in good faith, believing easements existed. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Your Honor," I said, holding up a flash drive, "I'd like to submit Defense Exhibit C." This contains an audio recording of Ms. Carmichael stating, and I quote, "I don't care if he owns it. I'll make his life hell until he gives in." The courtroom went completely silent. That was a private conversation. Brenda shouted, "Recorded for my property." I replied calmly, "Single-party consent state." Bradley tried to recover, mumbling about community benefits. But the damage was done. Judge Harrison had heard enough. "Counselor," she said sharply, "do you have any evidence of an easement? Any document whatsoever?" Bradley fumbled through his papers. "We're still reviewing historical records, Your Honor." "So that's a no." She turned to me, "Mr. Sterling, do you wish to proceed with your counterclaims?" "Yes, Your Honor. I'm seeking damages for trespass, reimbursement of legal fees, and a permanent restraining order." Brenda shot to her feet. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I have authority." The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "Ms. Carmichael, sit down, or I will hold you in contempt." Silence fell again. "Mr. Sterling," the judge continued, "your evidence is thorough and credible. I am inclined to grant summary judgment in your favor." Bradley made one last desperate request for more time. "Denied." Over the next 20 minutes, Judge Harrison dismantled every one of Brenda's claims piece by piece. Lack of evidence, fabricated arguments, documented harassment. The final ruling was devastating. All of Brenda's claims were dismissed with prejudice. She was ordered to pay $15,000 in damages, plus $5,000 in legal fees, and a permanent restraining order requiring her to stay at least 500 feet away from my property. But the judge wasn't finished. "Ms. Carmichael," she said coldly, "your behavior has been appalling. You've abused your position, harassed a law-abiding property owner, and wasted this court's time." Then she turned to Bradley with a warning about due diligence. And finally, the knockout blow: "I am forwarding this case to the district attorney for potential criminal trespass charges." Brenda's face crumpled. "I was only trying to help the community," she whimpered. "No," the judge replied. "You were trying to bully someone." When the gavel fell, it was over. Outside the courtroom, Brenda was immediately surrounded by angry HOA board members. I caught fragments of heated whispers, emergency meetings, resignations, votes of no confidence. Bradley slipped away without even looking at her. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. The HOA had unanimously removed Brenda from her position and banned her from leadership permanently. 2 months later, she pleaded guilty to misdemeanor trespass, 12-month probation, and 500 hours of community service. 6 months after that, I was invited to give a keynote lecture at the state law school. My topic: HOA overreach. I used our entire case as a study. The lecture went viral. Brenda's legacy wasn't a trail system. It was a cautionary tale. I later heard she sold her home at a loss and moved out of state. The new HOA board sent me an apology and, amusingly, a fruit basket. As for the $20,000 she paid me, I donated every cent to a legal aid foundation helping homeowners fight abusive HOAs. They even named a conference room after the case, the Carmichael Warning Room. Last I heard, Brenda was working as a receptionist at a small real estate office several states away, her ambitions buried beneath a restraining order, a criminal record, and a legal defeat that would follow her forever.